Alright, so here's a quick video on how I removed the clutch from the engine to remove and replace a belt, the serpentine belt. So the tools that I use to do this is a big hammer, a crescent wrench from Harbor Freight. So it's that 18-inch crescent wrench, and this pry bar. I also got that pry bar from Harbor Freight. Okay. So I'm still in the process of installing it, but I figured I would do a video because it's very difficult to find any videos on specifically for work on the E350 6.0 diesel van. So what you can see here is I already routed the belt. And keep in mind, some of these belts are different because not all 6.0s are exactly the same. This is a vacuum pump. When I first got a belt, they gave me the wrong belt. The dealer gave me the wrong belt. So I purchased a Motorcraft belt, and the one they gave me was for the 6.0 without the vacuum pump, which will be routed straight down. So I bought I unfortunately had to buy a different one. So right now I'm running a Continental belt. The only difference that I noticed is the stiffness, but other than that, they're very similar. In quality, the reviews online are very similar. I guess Continental has the gator back. This particular one was not the gator back, so it was a little bit of the lower end, or what was available. I'm not really too concerned. They felt about the same. And to make it easy, just in case in the future, which is probably not going to happen, I'm going to keep the stator out of the engine bay. And the only reason why I'm going to keep the stator out is just so I can have easier access to some of these parts. So what you'll notice is I replaced one of the pulleys and the belt tensioner. I did think about replacing that one, but honestly both of the pulleys were fine, and the belt tensioner felt completely fine as well. I just removed and replaced them because I had access to them. While I was in there, I kind of went ahead and sprayed it with some engine degreaser. That's something that might be worth doing. You'll just keep it clean if you do your own work. And here, I'll show you exactly how I held it in place and how I removed it. So first, here's the fan and the clutch. So that's the fan. And this is how I put the big crescent wrench. And then I use that large hammer to tap it right there. So a couple taps, actually more like 15 taps, broke it loose and I was able to remove it. But of course you're gonna need to keep it from spinning, and that's where the pry bar came in. So remember that pry bar I mentioned? So what you do with the pry bar, you just let it drop in. Okay, so because of the angle, it won't go exactly the way I had it, but I dropped the pry bar right through that hole, and it came out through the opposite hole, and I let it sit right there. And once I had the pry bar in there, I got the crescent wrench, put it around the clutch fan, and I just tapped it until it was able to come right out. And then it came right out. The stator wasn't really that big of a deal. It was in the way, so it's a little bit of a tight fit in there. The main reason why I'm going to keep the stator out is because the way these engines are set up in the van, it really doesn't make sense to keep it in there if I'm going to be doing more work. And also, it doesn't look like it interferes with any temperature or any airflow. From my perspective, I've torn apart a few engines. I just don't think it's going to interfere with anything. I'm going to show you a picture, or I'm going to show you how the stator looks in the shroud. I will be keeping the shroud in the engine. Okay, so there you can see the engine and a few different parts. Okay, so here is the shroud. So this is the upper shroud. That's the lower shroud. The lower shroud just has a couple bolts. You undo the lower shroud, it slips right off from the bottom. The upper shroud has 2 bolts as well, or at least that I noticed. One bolt here, opposite bolt right over there. And this one you kind of have to wiggle out from the top. There are 2 brackets that do hold the radiator in place, connecting it to the intercooler. That's pretty straightforward, and that's the stator right there. Stator, like I said, it was just kind of sitting in there, and that's going to be it might be going in the trash, or probably just keep it around. And just to confirm, I have 2 diesel vans. I have that one over there, and then I have this big guy over here. And what I'm going to do, just to double check the temperatures to see if there's any effect, I'm going to go ahead and just run it for a couple weeks, and I'll check the temperatures to see what I'm running, to see if there's actually an impact. I don't think there will be, but we'll see. And you'll see there's a bunch of reviews online about that. That's the old belt tensioner. There wasn't anything wrong with this one, but I figured since I was in there, might as well swap it out. It was a little bit dirty, but it wasn't that bad at all. So when you're working on this, remember that all your bolts are metric. There's a picture of there's a video of the radiator and intercooler. The radiator and both the radiator and intercooler, they come out together. It helps to have somebody push them from the bottom and somebody guide them from the top. Honestly, I can move some pretty heavy weight, but it's not necessarily the weight, it's more of the awkwardness of both, how they're kind of put together. So you might want to have somebody help you out with that, just so it's not too much of a pain. Once those are out, or once the shroud is out, you go ahead and pull the radiator and intercooler, and then you work on your fan. Once you get the fan out, it's just everything should start slipping right out. The torques on these, you'll find them online. The torque for the water pump, if you're going to be doing a water pump, is about 18 foot-pounds. I think the torque for the belt tensioner, I believe that was 18 foot-pounds. And I believe the torque for both idler arms, or excuse me, idler pulleys, are about 25 to 30 foot-pounds. You might want to confirm that. But you should be able to just check for play before you start replacing parts. I mean, if you're leaving the stator, you can that might be your best bet, because you will still have access to them. If you're putting the stator back in, just go ahead and replace the parts, because having that stator in will make it very difficult to start replacing, or to access it again before, unless you want to take it completely apart. And taking it completely apart is not too out of control, but the problem is that clutch, that fan clutch, that bolt, it just has so much torque that it does take a little bit of a beating. Or even if you have the special tool, it's still kind of a little bit difficult. And that's that bolt that goes right there. Let me see. Okay, so you can see everything's cleaned up. You can see some rags in there, keeping the engine from. I sprayed it. Degreaser it, then I scrubbed it down a little bit and put some water on it, so everything's plugged up so any water or moisture gets in the turbo. The intake was also covered up. It's now uncovered, obviously. That's pretty much about it. Here, I'll show you a look from the bottom so you see how you're gonna be pushing it up. Okay. So this is a van, and I have a 4x4 conversion in the front, so I have an axle, a Dana 60. The axle it doesn't necessarily get in the way, but it's in there. if you don't have an axle in the front, it might be easier. I haven't done the work on one without the axle. Hopefully I don't have to do it on that white one over there. But so look up from the bottom. See, you have a lot of axes down here. It's not too bad. Oh yeah, make sure that when you put that belt in that it's aligned. You want to make sure that it's sitting in the right grooves. The last thing you want to do is misalign it, start it up, and then you bust the belt. It's not fun, so that's probably not worth it. Let's see what's this. That's pretty much it. If you're curious, yeah, the front end lift is actually pretty new. That's it. So this is an E350 6.0 diesel. If you have any questions, let me know. Just post your question and I'll answer it. I have done a lot of work on this. I've done the blue spring upgrade. I've done the injectors. Pretty much taken this engine apart a couple times now, so ask away. I know a lot of people don't work on the 6.0. They work on, or excuse me, they don't work on the van. They actually work on the trucks. It's a little bit different. I think it's just axis is different. I mean, the axis can be a lot of work, so. All right, there you go.